Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Brennan, and today we're going to be talking about some homebrew rules that Brennan has added to Campaign 4 of Critical Role. So if you aren't caught up with Campaign 4, I recommend getting caught up because it's a little safer that way. I am going to be talking about some spoilers in this video. So if you aren't caught up, go get caught up to episode 8 and then come back and watch this video. So for those of you who have left, peace out. For the rest of us, let's get into it. So as we push forward into Campaign 4, we're starting to see more, quote, homebrew stuff. The reason I say quote homebrew stuff is because some of the stuff that some would consider to be homebrew, others wouldn't necessarily consider to be homebrew. For me, seeing that Laura Bailey is a class, a swashbuckler rogue, which isn't in the 2024 book as of right now. It's not in the core handbook. I don't know if it's been released since then, but as of right now that I could tell, it's not in any of the rules for 2024 rules, or what people are calling 5.5 or whatever. So a subclass that isn't even in the core game yet could be considered a homebrew, and for me, I do consider that to be rather homebrewy. However, it's on the lower end of it all because there is a baseline for it in previous editions, and they're supposed to be backwards compatible in certain ways. So realistically, it could be considered homebrew, but for most, it's probably not. For me, it is. But then in episode 8, we got to see Brennan's honest-to-God true homebrew stuff get introduced to the campaign, as Wick was the first person to go down since Octus went down, but I don't believe Octus even had like a chance to learn any of these because he was stabbed and then rolled a death save, so it didn't even matter. He sort of didn't have a choice to learn any of these things. So what are the homebrew rules, and why do I even bring up death saves in the first place? Well, the homebrew rules as of right now that we know of surround death saves. So the two new rules are as follows. 1, if you roll a successful death save, you are then able to give someone inspiration, meaning that they are allowed to re-roll a d20 at any point in time. I think that's really cool and really fun, and it works the same way as like a DM giving somebody arbitrary inspiration in any other game. It is a part of D&D that some tables do give inspiration out there. However, I really like that the idea of like another person watching someone else go down, and it's like they've been inspired by that person, like willingness to fight, and now they've been able to get a d20 in return for that. I think that's a really cool and really fun idea. Now, you need to roll a successful death save to be able to do this, so there is still some sort of cost to it. You can't roll a failure and still try to give somebody like inspiration. It's just not going to work. I really like that is a somewhat balance to it, because being able to give someone inspiration, which they don't have to spend right away, is really strong, but the cost is you have to be down and you have to succeed on a death save. I think that's a very good counter for it, and it ended up being used by Taor because Taor used it to roll, I think it was either roll a persuasion check later on or roll an attack. I think it was persuasion check later on, but it was still useful. And I like the fact that once you get this little thing in your pocket, you're like, this guy risked his life to give it to me, I kind of need to use it. And now I say he risked his life to give it to me is because there is another option here. Once you roll your first death save, and as long as it's successful, you can do the other option, which is you can choose to stabilize, which I think is interesting. Now, you have to roll your first death save first, and if you roll a failure, you can no longer pick to stabilize. You have to just, have to have 0 fails and you have to have 1 success. You can choose to stabilize, but then you're out of the fight. However, you could, this sort of argues against the other one, right? Like, you either stabilize and you don't do anything from now on, or you choose to use that successful roll you just did and help everybody else out, which I think is really interesting, because the way that current D&D works, once you're on your back out cold and rolling death saves, you're kind of worthless to everybody else, unless you're a specific class. There's one class I believe doesn't need to worry about this, and that is a Zealot Barbarian. Because as long as they're raging when they hit 0, their death saves become like their last couple of hit points. So like the typical, like they get to keep standing and then they get to take at least 2 more hits. I think it's actually 2 more hits exactly before they go down. So I think that's really cool for them, but this gives everybody else something to do after they're down. They either get to choose to stabilize, which means that people don't really have to worry about them until after combat, which means, that is an option, or you can still be helpful to everybody else and give inspiration until you stabilize naturally, which I think is really fun and really interesting. However, you could look at it this way: what's the safest choice? And that would be to stabilize. While I think that would be safe, if you're rolling successfully, I don't see why more people wouldn't be like, I'm going to give inspiration. I'm now up. I'm good. To me, both options are perfectly viable. 1, give somebody inspiration, or 2, choose to stabilize. I think both of them are really good choices, no matter how you look at it. One, you get to stay in the fight in some sort of fashion by giving other people inspiration, and the other just keeps you alive. I think it's a really smart move. Now, I would like to compare this to some Daggerheart death maneuvers, where one of them is arguably infinitely more, desirable than the other two are. So realistically, Brennan has done a really good job at making these death maneuvers, if you will, worthwhile no matter which way you look at it. I think this is a much better use of death moves as opposed to having one that's really overpowered and broken. And I'm not even going to say the words. Most of you who are on this channel for long enough understand what I'm talking about. But I do think it's important to sort of compare and contrast here. So let's talk about it. Why not? So in Daggerheart, there are 3 options. One, you get to choose to just go out cold and you take a battle scar if you roll. I believe if you roll your fear dice higher than your hope, you get a scar. And then there is, which takes away a hope slot, which is really interesting and really cool. Or you get to go Blaze of Glory, which means you get to critically succeed on something and you die at the end of it. You die saving everybody else, doing something critically successful, but you die. Great. That's great stuff. The third one is you roll your d12s, and if your hope is higher than your fear, you stand back up for however much that hope is worth. For no reason. This is the one that is undeniably desirable, because the likelihood of you rolling a crit in Daggerheart is pretty high. You just need to, it's a 50-50, if you will, but if you roll a crit, which is rolling both dice the same, which is insane, and then the odds are pretty good for that, it's not 50-50. You're more likely to stand up than not. But there is that chance, which is, annoying, but there is that chance that you just die. You roll the 2 dice, your fear is higher, and then your hope, and you die. So what's the difference between these? One is none of them truly risk your life to do in D&D. The D&D stuff that Brennan has introduced, none of them really risk your life. It's just being able to support your other players or not become a hindrance to them in combat, which I think is really smart. So basically, you're rolling until you can't keep yourself stable anymore, and you can't be I could choose to not go out here. It's a matter of, I really like it because it's a matter of choosing to go out and being helpful, or not being helpful, or staying in the fight in some form or fashion and still being helpful. I do like that those are your 2 options. You can save yourself or you continue to aid your allies. I think that's really smart because it's less about you. It's more about what they can do in combat once you're stabilized, right? Because the fear of your character being down is you become useless. But if you're still up and still able to do stuff, or still, you're not up, but you're still able to do things, I think it's rather cool and rather interesting that you are still worthwhile even while being out cold. You get 3 chances to give inspiration to people as long as you don't roll a death save, or a death fail, that is. If you roll a death fail, you just keep rolling naturally normal until you're done. And realistically, even if you roll a death fail, you can still give inspiration until you're stabilized on your own. But what I like about the choice of not going into any further than that and just being oh, I rolled successfully here, I can keep myself alive. And that's important. Because this way they don't have to worry about healing me, they don't have to worry about, me rolling poorly and potentially dying. I can just choose to not die here. I can choose to cover up my wound. I'm holding my thigh wound closed. I'm not going to bleed out anymore. That's what he's choosing to do. And I think that's a fun idea. The idea of, instead of me inspiring people while I'm down on the ground, I'm holding my wound and keeping myself alive until the end of combat so that they can focus on everything else, is a brilliant idea in my opinion. It just means that it's sort of like that moment in an anime, right? Where someone gets taken out of the fight, but everyone else has to keep going. So that person's no, just keep doing what you guys are doing. I'm going to stay here and focus on myself. You guys have a task to do. I really like that concept and really like that idea. I think it's super fun and super interesting. And it doesn't one's not better than the other in any sort of way. They're both equally good in my opinion. And I think that's the balance Daggerheart missed with its death moves. Now, I've compared it to Daggerheart a lot, but I truly believe that Daggerheart inspired these homebrew rules to bring in other things that people can do while they're dying or going out cold, or however you want to word being downed. It is interesting to add more stuff for players to do, because it is super fucking boring, right? In regular D&D, it is super boring that you watch everybody else in turn order do something, and then it gets to you and you roll a d20 and I get my 1 save. That's all I do today. and then you wait for the next handful of rounds to go around, you roll again, I rolled a fail, fuck me, right? It's so much better to be able to do something with that, and I still like that there is like a risk versus reward sort of thing, right? I rolled that successful roll, I can choose to stabilize and not worry myself and my other players anymore, or I can keep risking my chances to be able to stabilize and give my friends inspiration. I think that is such a cool conundrum to have that I might steal it. I really do think that that is a very good like set of rules here. It's so much fun to think about, like, because it is just that, like, what am I going to do with myself right now? I like that. I like the idea that it's no longer just I'm rolling, let's see what happens. It's now I've made a roll. What do I do to help others or myself? I think this is brilliant, and again shows Brennan's like true mastery of game balance. He has done a fantastic job so far of balancing things, whether it be unfairly balanced or whether it be rather balanced. He's done a really good job. I don't feel like they've ever had a fight where it's been too easy the entire way through. It's either been extremely difficult or it's been like, you know, a moderate challenge. He's done a fantastic job of balancing the game to where it's never felt too easy. And yes, unfairly balancing a game is still balancing a game if the DM wanted to unfairly balance that encounter. It's the only time an encounter is poorly balanced is when it's way too easy for the players. That's just my personal philosophy, and I feel like Brennan has hit the nail on the head with it. I feel like he's probably in the same line of thinking as I am for that. So realistically, he's done a fantastic job, and these rules are brilliant in my eyes. So let me know what you guys think of these homebrew rules. He also says that there's like bloodied homebrew rules, like he mentioned in that same like time frame where he was talking about these death rules. He mentioned that there are other rules on that same sheet with these death save rules, which is interesting because bloodied means I think bloodied means you're below like either half or a quarter of your health, which means there's probably more stuff that is going to come up later, which I'm very intrigued by. I wish we kind of got the document ourselves to know exactly what it is. I feel like if you're going to have like a mixed rule set for your live play, you need to, and even homebrews, you need to give us some information. If it's a player class, that's one thing. We'll see everything that they can do eventually, or up to the level they play as eventually. So realistically, that's not a big deal. But like homebrew rules like this, I feel like we should have them on a document for ourselves to be able to read. It should be on like Critical Role, like .com somewhere, or maybe Brennan should just tweet it out. I couldn't find anything for these rules, so that's why I'm saying this. I feel like they should release that. And if something has come out in between me recording and releasing this video, then phooey on me, I guess. But either way, I do think it should be out and available to us so that way we have a better understanding. Like, I feel like there's the reading comprehension aspect of things. Like, you have to be able to look at it and read it properly to be able to truly understand something. So I kind of want that. I really would like to see that. But let me know what you guys think about these homebrew rules. Like I said, I think they're brilliant and fantastic, and I'm probably going to fucking steal them at some point down the line. I can't right now because I'm already a couple sessions deep into my new game that I'm running, so I can't add in these new death rules because some people have already gone down, and I would have had them beforehand. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think the other bloodied rules are that he's going to like sort of introduce later on once that happens, because it is going to become relevant at some point down the line when characters aren't getting two-shot, because that's what damn near happened here in that episode where Wick nearly got destroyed in 2 hits. So I'm curious, Wick needs more armor. It's just that simple. What do you guys think of the rules, these new homebrew rules, and what do you guys think these new bloodied rules are? I'm very curious to know what you guys have to think. And until Friday for the recap of episode 9, peace out.